Hey guys, welcome to the classroom, where it's you, me, and my trusty whiteboard going through matters of the body, mind, heart, and spirit in a relatively easy to understand format. My name is Dr. Roshan Ramnarayan, and class is in session. Today is going to be a topic that we can all relate to. We can all relate to having anxiety. Today, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on anxiety, exactly where it comes from and what it's about, and more importantly, what we can do to help with it. Because 5 years ago, I could have, because the world was relatively stable, I could have very easily predicted how my plans could have been, where I want to go, how much money I want to save, and all of these good life things. But because of the instability of the world now, it's really difficult to anticipate what's going on. And as a result of that, almost everyone I meet has some level of anxiety, whether it has to do with personal anxiety or anxiety for loved ones. We're all anxious for whatever reason. And so that made me think, if we're all affected by this anxious feeling, how can I distill such an amorphous, nebulous feeling into a way that we can all understand? And through own personal experience and reflecting on it, I came up with two things. So exactly what it is. So anxiety for me could be broken down into two things, or two facets. The first is, and this is important, self-doubt. And then the other one, it's fear of the unknown. So these two characteristics, again, just for me, based on my own thoughts, my own musings, these two characteristics are what define anxiety. Also, not just that as well, but I guess these two things here feed into the need for control. Because again, we can't control things that makes us anxious. So for instance, think of the student who's going into an exam room. They have no idea what the exam is going to bring. But if they studied a lot and they're confident in themselves, their anxiety won't be as high. But let's say, for instance, they didn't study a lot, then they'll have a lot of self-doubt, and that will bring the anxiety up. For instance, take a newborn parents, first-time parents who is in a delivery room and they're now having their baby for the first time. There is major fear of the unknown. And because it's something that we have no control over, there's a lot of self-doubt. And so as a result of that, is this something that we can manage? The anxiety is high. Think of the person going into the interview. We have no idea who the interviewer is. Am I good enough for the job? And I cannot control at all the scenario around it. So these things, to me at least, is what define anxiety. And this, I think I covered the most part, and because again, think of the mother whose teenage son is out hanging out and driving home. I don't know, and he said he was going to be home at 10 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. I have no idea where he is. And because he's a teenage boy, I'm not sure entirely whether he has the maturity to be responsible. And we definitely cannot control him as a result of all these things. So that to me is the basis of anxiety. And that to me is the uncertainty of it all and our self-doubt when it comes to ourselves or our loved ones that raise this anxiety up. So it's fairly simple. So the question now is, how to help? There are a couple things we can do to help with our anxiety. And to be honest, it really stems from these three things. Now, stuff that doesn't relate to this. So for instance, nourish our gut flora. So the reason why, and that might seem sort of random, but our gut flora are actually major producers of a neurochemical called GABA. GABA. I talked about this in my gut flora lecture a couple of weeks ago. And so GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. Big fancy word, but GABA is one of our primary inhibitory neurotransmitters. Big fancy words, but all it means is that it's one of our most powerful anti-anxiety hormones. Yes, guys, we literally have a calming and relaxing hormone, GABA. And it's produced by our gut flora, the huge, happy, healthy bacterial community that lives within our gut. And so by nourishing our gut flora, we could actually promote the production of GABA and help with anxiety. So for instance, and this is a trend that I've noticed, the majority of people that have reflux have anxiety. Why? Because reflux is in part due to disturbed gut flora, and disturbed gut flora means less anxiety. And so how do we nourish our gut flora? It's very simple. We stop things that they don't like, and we start things that they like. So we stop things like they don't like flour, they don't like sugar, processed foods, etc. All the nice things in life. And what they do like, they like probiotics and prebiotics. Yeah? And again, I covered this a bit more in depth in our gut flora lecture, so you can totally check that out, how to nourish our gut flora. One of the other things we can do that again, not so much relating to this, is we can totally sleep better and de-stress more. So I'm sure everyone here can relate to the fact that having a good night's rest helps us to feel rejuvenated, a bit more confident, a bit more centered, a bit more grounded. And as a result of that, we have the ability to have a bit more self-confidence in ourselves. And so de-stressing and sleeping better would prepare us for whatever scenario we're about to face, because we have more reserve, we have more vitality available to us. So that's a fairly sort of self-explanatory one. The other one is having a support structure. A support structure is really important, because if we feel like we're alone, if we feel like we're an island and there's no one coming to our aid, then that would raise my anxiety if I feel like I'm there alone, because again, we're facing the unknown by ourselves, and that would fuel our self-doubt. I get by with a little help from my friends, according to the Beatles. And if we have our friends and family beside us, then it may engender us with a bit more self-confidence. And so having a support structure is really important. But in this day and age where everyone, every family and everybody is sort of to themselves, and we all interact with each other through a screen, it's difficult to have a robust, sort of diverse support structure that's there for us when we need it. And so how we develop and nurture this support structure is really about being open and vulnerable to people. And as we are open and vulnerable to them, once they're the right people and they're open and vulnerable to us, we form trust. And once there is trust amongst each other, then we have people that's willing to go the extra mile for us. We have people who are willing to vouch for us. We have people who are willing to stand beside us and say, you can do this, I believe in you. And so support structures don't just happen like that. Social support structures require work. It requires dedication. It requires a desire to connect with other people and be open and vulnerable to them. Because these people have access to your heart, unfortunately. And you have to choose the right people for your support structure. So these are a couple things that we could do that helps in terms of with our anxiety. That's sort of miscellaneous. In terms of the self-doubt, I had a lovely talk on self-confidence in that regard. And the gist of, and you could totally check it out, but the gist of this talk came about from having a little cachet, a little sort of collection of our own success stories that we can easily call upon. Because by nature, we tend to look at the negative side of things. What if I fail? What if this doesn't work out? That sort of thing. And so by thinking back to the times when we thought we would fail, but we actually succeeded, and focusing on that, our own success stories, that helps tremendously with self-doubt. It works for me and it works for my patients as well. When I first time I had to do a perform procedure on a patient, I was unsure of myself. But by the 50th time I had to do the procedure, there was no self-doubt. I was confident I could do it. And because I was confident I could do it, the unknown did not bother me as much. So if I had to hazard a guess as to which one of these I could change that would make the most impact, it's most certainly our self-confidence. And again, we go back to the times that and the place that we won, despite our own misgivings, despite our own self-doubts. We reflect on those times that we succeeded, that we survived when we didn't think we would. And we have a little mental place where we keep those success stories. So when that inevitable self-doubt creeps in, then you know for a fact that, hey, I can call upon these success stories, really realize that, hey, I could probably, if I did those things, there's a good chance I could do this. And so that way the fear decreases and the unknown doesn't seem so frightening anymore. And a final word on the need for control. I guess, realizing that life is not something that we can control. Life is a river that we can't push or we can't pull. We have to just go along with it. Sometimes the river is quick. Sometimes it's winding and lazy. Sometimes you go over a waterfall. And realizing that, something, it's just to be part of life rather than try to wrestle life into control. That to me helps. Because, for instance, there was a patient I saw this morning who was very anxious because, well, she's the mother of the house and the house is always a mess. So whenever she goes into the home, she has her husband and her 4 kids in the home. And so the house is never the way she wants it. And because of that, whenever she has to go home, she's always very anxious to go home. And so I said to her, because the house is a shared space between 6 people, the house will be the average of those 6 people's cleanliness, unfortunately. If you're ultra clean and the 4 kids are ultra messy and your husband is somewhere in between, then the house will be somewhere around here. And so, granted, we still try to impress upon the kids cleanliness and all that good stuff. But using this as an example, realizing that we can't control everything. And the most that we could control is our own reaction to situations and how we feel. And a lot of times we don't even control that self. And so doing shadow work, which I spoke about before, and even in meditation lecture, those are the things that we can use to help to learn to control our mind. And by controlling our mind, because the mind is what we use to perceive reality, by controlling our mind, to me at least, we actually start to control how we perceive reality. And so think about that, guys. Through meditation, through shadow work, through just self-reflection and self-realization, we can actually perceive reality with us being in control. The things that the reality will be out of our control, but at least we have responsibility of how we perceive those things and how those things affect us inwardly. So, very short lecture on, to me, what anxiety is and what it's comprised of. A couple things that could help with it, and more certainly working on the self-confidence that makes the unknown a little less scary, and then understanding that we can't control things, but we can control how we react to things. So I hope that was a fairly, brief lecture. I got it straight to the point. And again, as with all my lectures, these are things that are easy to understand, but as the implementation of it is where the beauty lies, and that's where the growth happens. So if there's any questions or concerns, guys, please shoot me a comment. I answer every single comment. And if there's a topic that you'd like me to discuss, leave a comment as well. So until then, Class dismissed.